Do you feel the urge to move toward a more play-based practice and just don't know how to do it? Or maybe you're struggling to incorporate more child-led learning into your otherwise teacher-led program. The research is clear. Play is how children learn best during the early childhood years, but creating a classroom where play is the focus isn't always as straightforward as it may seem. I'm your host, Jen Zollinger. Join me as we explore the incredible ways that play serves preschool children and how to best implement it in your classroom. This is Play Before Pencils. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to chat about the importance of play. This is a topic that has an unlimited number of episodes within itself, but today we're going to take a bird's eye view of what play is and why it is so critical during the early childhood years. I'm going to assume that if you're here listening, you have at least a basic interest in how play can enhance the learning of young children, and you're ready to learn more and start implementing it as a more primary focus in your program. I'd like to start out with a quote from one of my childhood favorites, Fred Rogers. It is simple and profound and one you may have heard a time or two. He says, "Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning." Mr. Rogers understood that children learn best when the environment supports their natural desire to acquire skills and knowledge. Children come into this world ready to learn. They are using their senses and soaking up knowledge from the moment that they take their first breath. Learning is an innate part of who they are, and during a baby's first couple of years of life, we marvel at all that they are capable of doing with seemingly little intervention from the grown-ups in their lives. Adults are rarely more enamored than they are when they witness a baby or toddler meeting a developmental milestone for the first time. And then they turn 3 and become preschoolers. While we still find their antics and accomplishments entertaining, we also start to have less faith in their continued ability to learn without adult intervention. We enroll them in school where they will sit at tables and learn to be still and quiet for inappropriately long periods of time. We seek out programs that focus on teaching them academic skills, often long before they're developmentally ready, because we worry that if we don't, they will be ill-prepared to enter kindergarten. Before long, our children find themselves in a world where play is no longer a part of how they learn, but is instead a reward that comes after the work is done. The activities that serve as play are individual to each of us. For one who revels in risk-taking, scaling a mountain wall might be the ultimate form of play. I, on the other hand, prefer to keep my feet firmly planted on the ground, and engaging in such an activity would arouse terror within me. While the form that play takes on will vary from person to person, Dr. Peter Gray has defined play as having the following 5 characteristics. First, play is self-chosen and self-directed. Second, it is intrinsically motivated. Third, it is guided by mental rules. Fourth, it is always creative. And fifth, it is conducted in an alert, active, but non-stressed frame of mind. In a typical preschool environment, there are varying degrees of play that take place over the course of the day. There may be periods of free play, which meet all of the characteristics outlined by Dr. Gray. There might also be periods of guided play, where a teacher participates in the play in an effort to guide learning in a particular direction. More often than not, though, the bulk of the time is spent in teacher-directed play, activities chosen by the teacher with a specific end goal in mind, but presented in playful ways. Learning can take place in any of these scenarios, but research has shown that when we are engaged in the kind of play outlined by Dr. Gray, our brains are creating new circuits and connections that will develop the neural pathways that create our physical, social, emotional, and cognitive capabilities. Play, quite literally, helps us build the skills that are most important for our success as human beings. According to Dr. Karen Purvis, a researcher and passionate advocate for children, scientists have found that it takes approximately 400 repetitions for a new synapse to be created in the brain, unless it is done with play, in which case it only takes 10 to 20 repetitions. If this is the case, why do our schools, especially our early childhood classrooms, continue to be places where teacher-directed activities take center stage? Why is free play not the primary mode of learning for our youngest students? I think the answer to this question is multifaceted and not something that can be answered in one podcast episode, but I do believe that early childhood educators have the power to be the voice of change. How do we do that, though? First, we have to know our stuff. We've got to be armed with information so that when questions come, whether from parents, administrators, lawmakers, or even our fellow teachers, we are prepared to answer with boldness. At the very least, we need to know our state preschool standards. I recently gave a presentation at a conference on the topic of emergent writing. After receiving a couple of questions about specific writing skills, I asked session attendees if they knew what our state learning standards were for writing skills for 3- and 4-year-olds. Not a soul raised their hand. It made me wonder if one of the reasons we expect so much out of children academically at the end of preschool is because we don't have a full understanding of what is appropriate for their developmental level. And if we don't know what preschoolers should be learning, how are we to know the best way to teach it? As I answered the question for session attendees with the information provided in our state's preschool learning standards, there were more than a few raised eyebrows. The expected writing skills were far less complex than what most had thought, and suddenly the idea of learning these skills through play rather than worksheets didn't seem quite so far-fetched. One woman even approached me afterward and asked where she could find these standards. I'll admit that a portion of me cringed just a little bit that she didn't know already where to find them, but more than that, I respected that she was willing to ask and was ready to learn more. Next, we need to be confident enough to go against the grain. Where I live, academic preschools are the norm. Finding a preschool that doesn't heavily advertise their academic curriculums is not easy. There is a belief that parents want academics, and so if we want to have a successful program, we had better offer lots of academics. But the truth is, if parents have high expectations for academic achievement in preschool, it's because we have sent the message that that is what is appropriate. I was worried when I started my program that it would be an uphill battle to fill my classes on the basis of play. I believed in it, but I wasn't sure that the parents would. Imagine my surprise and gratitude when they did. By the time I started my second year, I had a lengthy waitlist full of people who had been searching for exactly what I was providing. They wanted play. I feel like a sea change is happening and more parents are starting to understand the importance of play, and they can be some of our greatest allies. One last suggestion I'll offer is to keep learning. Wouldn't it be nice if a diploma or years of experience under our belts provided us with all of the knowledge that we needed to answer every question and solve every problem that comes our way as early childhood educators? I wish. I had a basic foundation of the importance of play when I left college, but it wasn't until many years later that I really started digging into the research and learning more. It started as an effort to brush up on my skills upon returning to the classroom after taking a hiatus to be home with my own children, but it ended up opening a whole new world for me. And then, when I was able to put it into practice and could see how magnificently it worked, all I could do was wish I'd had this information sooner. Continuing education is critical to our ongoing success as teachers. If we are not learning, growing, and improving our skills on a regular basis, our practices are in jeopardy of becoming stale and out of date. It's easier now than ever to obtain knowledge through books, podcasts, social media, and research findings. They are all right at our fingertips. I sometimes find myself with so much information I want to learn that I can't even fit it all in. Never forget that teachers are still learners, and there's always new information out there to add to our toolboxes. We have to be proactive in seeking out additional knowledge. The shift toward more developmentally appropriate education practices isn't going to happen overnight, unfortunately. But being in the early childhood field puts us in a unique position. We are the first stop in a child's educational experience, and we have an opportunity to embrace play and show the world how truly effective it is. If you are new to play, deep, engaging, child-led play, there is no better time than now to start learning more and exploring all of the benefits it holds for the children in your care. If play is already a part of your classroom landscape, I extend to you a challenge to share some of the benefits you've seen through a conversation or a social media post to help spread the important message that play is what young children need most. At the end of the day, I feel that I've accomplished the most as a teacher when I send my students home with a love of learning. And that love grows through having the freedom to explore, discover, and learn through self-chosen experiences and meaningful interactions with those they share the classroom with. It grows through play. Thanks again for listening. Remember to hit that subscribe button to continue learning how to bring more play into your classroom. Plus, get more tips on Instagram at play_before_pencils or at playbeforepencils.com.